Yeah, good morning, everyone. Hope I'm audible and everyone could see my screen here. Am I audible and you could see my screen? Yes. Okay, nice. So, where are we, guys? What are we discussing? I think in the last class, we were creating this web service called as validation credentials. We could able to pass the user ID and password to the uh, server, and server checking that whether it is equal to user admin or hello 123. If it is equal, I'm going to respond back with valid or invalid, right? That is what we are looking. And right now we have hard coded the user ID and password. We are going to replace that. And on the top, I think we are even working on the product details also, right? That part we have done. So let me go with the product details. I think user underscore admin and hello 123. And once I click on login, oh, invalid captcha has been added. Okay, I say QQZZZZ. Once I click on login, it is taking me to the product details. Okay, this is what we were looking into. Okay, I think we can change the bit of look and feel for this. This is the ally tag. Why the description 300 pixels? Product description. Let me change the look and feel for this. Product details dot css. Okay, on the top, we are even getting the rating part. And this main container should come in a scroll bar. Okay, so if we reload this page, I say login, I say user underscore admin password, hello 123. This is K J 6AGE. Once I click on login, this is how the product details are coming for us. Okay, I think the same product is getting repeated multiple times. We'll check on that. Okay, so this is how we could able to load the product details. And one thing what we need to see is once you are into the product details page, I should not see this login and new sign up. Instead, I should see the logout option. Okay, so let us go for that. I go with index.html. Under that, where is my login and logout buttons? Okay, so these are the buttons here. I see view or wrap. So I would like to create another button, another div tag here. And I say this guy as login, login buttons. And this is logout buttons. And here for the logout, we won't be having this. This guy will be logout. Okay, on click, logout user. Okay, right now I'm not giving the functionality because in order to make the user to log out, we need to implement the sessions. Okay, we'll go for that later. So I say logout buttons by default, those will be display none. Okay, and this login button has to be hidden once the user login. Okay, and how the user is logging in, let us go with the JavaScript code. Under the JavaScript code, login.js. So we are saying that invalid credentials dot hide. If it is a valid user, I need to hide that, right? I will say $off dot login buttons dot hide and logout buttons dot show, right? Logout buttons dot show. Now, once we reload the page, I say login. I say user admin. Hello, 123 SYXEKJ. I click on login. This is how it is. Now we see I have gone with this logout and sign up button, but I have the logout. On click out logout, what need to be done? We'll have a look on that next. Okay, fine. Now, one more thing what we need to discuss over here is when we go to the web service, okay, going into the server side, we see that this is the web service what we have created, router.get method. I already said that request.query. Whenever we want to read the data from the user, okay, when we want to read the data from the user, where the data being sent by the user is in the get request. Okay, under the get request, if the user is sending the data, we call that guy, we will be reading the data using the request.query option. Okay, request.query is the predefined property. using which we could able to read the data from the user, which is being sent from the get format. What if user want to send the data in a post format? The reason why we are saying that post is, we know that get is not a secured way of communicating. Post is the way through which you could able to communicate the data in a secured format. Okay. So see, for example, when I'm reloading the page, when I'm going with this login, I say user ID, user underscore admin. I say password, something I'm passing, and captcha. I say M286CO. Once I click on login, for this, let us go with the network tab. That day we discussed it, right? Network is the tab through which we could able to track list of all the Ajax calls or resources which are loading from the server. Now, once I click on login, if you see this web service, under the web service, the data, user ID, and the password, and why the captcha is going to the server, we don't need to send the captcha to the server. We don't need to send us a captcha because captcha validation right now we are doing at the client side itself. Under login.js, when I say user captcha, you don't need to send this. I'm not going to send the data. Captcha validation happening at the client side itself. Okay, so if you see, when I'm mouse hovering on that URL, you should see that the data is going in the form of a query parameters. Okay, the data getting appended to the URL itself. But that should not happen. The problem is if the data is going with the get communication or if the data is getting appended to the URL itself, that is not a secured way of communication. Okay, so people who are sitting beside you, they could able to read the data what you're going to send. So to make it post communication, let us go back to our web service. First of all, if you see, this is the web service, what we have said, we said like router.get. But now instead of router.get, we make it as router.post communication. I mean, the web service, we are modifying it to a post guy so that he can able to handle the post data. And whenever we are going to have the post data, it is not going to be request.query, it is going to be request.body. Okay, in general, if it is a plain Node.js application, we have to read the data by using the if we have to read the data from the post communication, there is an external node module which we call it as body parser. But right now, as we are using the Express node module, we can simply make use of request.query as a post get communication, request.body as a post communication. Any data which is been coming from the post, it will be like request.body. It's not request.query. This is a very good interview question, guys. If it is get communication, how you're going to read the data? If it is post communication, how you're going to read the data? So get is request.query, post is request.body. Okay. Nice. Next, now I have made it as request.body. That is fine. Now let us restart the server because we have done the changes from the server side. Now I do the npm restart. I go back here. I reload my page. I say login. I say user underscore admin. I use some password. I say some L2LZTU. Now, once I click on login, invalid captcha. Why so? L2LZN03CLN. Once I click on login, invalid captcha. Why so? Login.js. Okay, you're reading this data and you're putting this. Okay, instead of this, I say var Okay, yeah, sorry guys. Okay, so what I'm doing is instead of putting into the user object, because user data is the object which is going to the server. Now I don't want to put this captcha into the server object. I'm just taking it as an individual variable. Okay. Okay, now let us save this guy, come back over here and reload this page. I say login user underscore admin. Hello, 123. Once I save 5QOWLA. Now, once I click on login, you see here the captcha validation is fine. But here, when I'm doing this guy, you see it is saying like 404. We know what the status of 404? Server, URL is not available. Okay. So why the reason it is saying we have already created the web service, right? We created a web service with validate credentials. The problem is you have created the what do you say? You have created the post communication, but at the client side, what you are doing, we are actually going with the get communication. See, Axios.get is the method what we are using. So now instead of get, we need to go with the post communication. So let us say this is going to be post communication. Now when I save it, I come back and I reload the page, because like when the web service is expecting as a post communication, or the web service is written for a post communication, even from the client side also we need to put a request with a post communication only, right? So I say login, I say user underscore admin, password is hello 123 MLTJBR. Once I click on login, you see here, I could able to go to the user credentials, but I'm getting the data as invalid. Why so? User underscore admin and password is okay. In that case, the first thing what we need to see is from the server, you see here, I could able to read this complete data. See, earlier we were getting this data with the request.query, because we are passing in a get communication. Now we are now passing it as a post communication. It is request.body, and your request.body is like this. You see the data is not direct, it is under params. Now I say under the server side request.body.params, so that all the data will flow into the user ID. From there we'll check it. Is it is params, params. Done. Now let us save it. I did a change in the server. I need to recompile it. I come back and reload the page. I go with login. I say user underscore admin. Password is hello123. I go with captcha VKYPSC. I go with login. You see, I could able to see the same data. Earlier, the only difference what we have done is, earlier we have created a get communication or get API or get REST API, and now we could able to make the post API. And one more thing is, on a single JavaScript file, we can implement both get communication and post communication also, guys. Say, for example, I want to provide a web service for the end user, so that end user can make use of the get or post. So in that case, in the same file, I will say some get communication also. So this logic at line number 20 will come into the picture. The logic which is at the line number 20 will come into the picture if the user is creating a get communication, and the logic which is at line number 6 will come into the picture if the user puts a request for post communication. Are we clear, guys? And guys, one more thing. I have logged in from my phone. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and you can speak out if you have any questions. So are you clear till here, guys? Everyone, how do we handle the get and post communication at the Node.js server side? Yes, right? Everyone. Good. Now, the next part, what we have here is, so we have validated this data, that is fine. Now let us start working on the database part. Okay, before database, are we pending with anything? This web server, this product data is also still hard coded. I mean, okay, one more thing. This product details, I can make it as a web service, right? I say I go with the load product data. You see, the load product data, the data is coming from the hard coded data. Instead of coming with hard coded on the client side, can I move this guy to the web service? Yes, right? I take out this guy. I go with the web service under your route.js, right? Sorry, under your routes folder, we have, where is that routes folder? This is all public folder. Yeah, under routes folder, I'm going to create a new file. I say get product details.js. Okay. And let me copy the code what we have under index.js. Okay. And I mean, the reason why I'm copying the index.js code is it's again the same. The minimum thing what I needed is express, create a router reference, router.get method, exporting the router. Okay. So under this for now, okay, let me copy this product data. Let us take out this. I say where product data is equal to so and so. I'll make it as a JSON object. Say some data is going to be an array. Okay. This is the data what I have, the product data. Why I'm getting this errors? Because data has to be array of values. No, here it should be array closing. Okay, save this guy. Now we know that I say product data is equal to JSON dot stringify product data response. Is it is response or res? Res dot send product data. Okay, save this guy. And my web service is ready. And again, as we said, we are not going to create any get communication. We will make it as, or else let us see this. I say get communication, save this, and restart your one more thing. Before restarting, I need to configure this new web service under the app.js file, right? So let's go to the app.js file. Under that, include the file first. Where, one second, guys. Okay, so I say where get product details is equal to require uh, dot slash route slash get product details. Okay. Okay. Now I have to say app.use slash get product details, and this is going to be this guy. Got it? So this is the web service URL what we have. Now let us restart your service. I come back to the browser. Now if I say localhost 3000 and if I give the path get products data not found, is this is the URL what I got details I said. Now if you click on enter, not coming. I said get product, not products. So let us make it as product, get the products detail or get product details. Yeah, that will be fine. Okay, now if you see here, when I'm clicking on this web service, I could able to get the data. Now this is a get communication. This is a get communication. That is the reason you could able to hit it on the browser and you should able to see the response here. But what if it is a post communication here? Okay, if it is a post communication, what I have to do, the service, instead of this get, I make it as a post. Now once I do the post communication, let us restart this service, come back to the browser. If I reload the page, obviously it's not going to be thrown. Why so? Any request by default, whatever it goes from the browser, it will be a get communication. Just give me a second, guys. Okay, so if you see here by default, whatever the hit, what we do from the browser directly, it will be a get communication. Okay, so now how do you make the post communication? This is where the tool called as Postman will come into the picture. You know, like the developer who actually what do you say, a developer who actually develops the web service. Assume like there is a backend developer, he don't know what is the UI and he don't know like how do we put the Ajax calls and all. His only interest is or his only expertise on creating the web service. Now in his case, like if he has created a post type of URL and he want to test that guy, that is where our Postman tool will be helpful. Okay, so I will take a dedicated class only for the Postman tool to how do we test the APIs, how do you pass parameters to the APIs, that we'll be looking into the later class. For now, I want to make it as a post communication. As we are UI developers, I'll just change this, whatever the data, what we are getting, right? So on load, what we are doing in order to load the product details, load P details is the method what we are calling. But instead of this, I need to go with the Axios. Okay, Axios dot post is the method. For this, we need to give the URL. This is the URL what we are hitting. As I said you, whenever you're hitting the APIs, don't give the absolute path, give the relative path. So that in future, when there is a change on the port number or the system name, it will automatically pick it out. You don't need to take care of it. Okay, and right now we are not passing any data. Dot then is the predef. And one more thing, guys, today is Saturday, right? We need to cover the pending ECMA 6 topics, right? No one reminded me, guys. I would have started with the ECMA 6. I'm still pending with the promises and all. I mistakenly started this. Okay, fine then. So just remind me. Maybe in the next week, Saturday again, I will take the long class, guys, like 2 hours or 3 hours of session. And next Sunday also, I might ask you to come, guys. So get ready for that. Okay, because like a lot of topics are pending, and I know that, I mean, because of my personal things, I'm delaying the things. So I'll make sure I'll be covering on the next Sunday class also. Okay, fine. So let's go with this then method. I say the response. I say console.log response. Okay. And if we have an error, dot done. One second. If it is done, we can even pass the second method, right? The second method, which is for error. I can say console.log error while getting product data. Okay. Now I'm hitting this web service. Let us see what is the response we are receiving from this. Come back and read. Okay, I go for login. I go with the UID. Is my server started? Yes. I say user underscore admin. Password hello123. Captcha AU25CG. Once I click on login, what is happening? Go with the console. Axios is not defined. Is it is Axios? Why the Axios is not available over here? Axios.post. Why it is not visible here? Once I reload the page. Once I click on login, I see this Axios is not defined. How come the Axios cannot be defined? Am I not including this? And one more thing, I see this under the network. When I go with this login, why nothing is happening? When I say refresh, I say dbmkfd. I go for login. Nothing is happening. Why so? Oh man. I say login pay details. It was working. I say login.js, axios.post, validate user credentials. Did I commented anything here? Login. GGHSXF. Go for console. Axios is not defined. How come require is not defined in load product data.js? Load product data.js. Who added the required? Why do I need this, man? Please save it. Reload this guy. Login. User underscore admin. If you are not talking, please unmute yourself. Capture V30 and once I go with the login. Okay, you see here, I could able to hit to the product details and I'm receiving the product data here. And whatever the data we receive, it is under data dot, okay, the preview is under the data, we have all the product data, right? So what I will say is load product data. Under this, it will be response is the key data. Where is the JSON? P details. I say P details is equal to response dot data. Okay, whatever the data we are getting that we are rendering. After this, I could able to say to execute this guy. Okay. Save this, come back and reload this. When I say npm start, I go for this. When I reload the page, I say login. I say user ID, user underscore admin. Let me close this. Password is hello123. I say C1DL4D. Once I click on login, product data not loading. Why so? Axios.post load product data. Load product details has to start work on this. It has to work. Let us see why it's not getting loaded. Console is hello 123. A5VPVD. Once I click on login. Okay, the response is not direct here. You see, under the data, we have a data here. Okay, I need to say response.data.data. So that is how, I mean, you need to write the UI code relative to your API response. So I go with this login. I say user underscore admin hello 123 DE045A. Once I click on login, you see the product data getting loaded. Okay. Now we have the product data also getting loaded dynamically. I mean, at least for the UI part, we are not hard coding anything. We are reading from the server side only. Okay, we are hitting this API and we are getting the data. Now, what is the thing which is pending here? The pending thing is, uh, when we are hitting the API, we are getting the data, but at the API side, we are hard coding the data. This hard coding should not be done. Instead of this, what we need to go is we need to go to the database. Okay. So let us cover the database part also, guys. Okay, let us, at least for today, let us go with what is the installation process of the MongoDB, so that from Monday class, I'm going to talk about what is MongoDB, why the reason, at least what is the reason and all we'll be discussing today. And on from Monday class, I'm going to show you how do we actually create collections in MongoDB, how you're going to store the data. Then how do you connect from web services to the MongoDB? We will cover that. And again, when I'm starting the database doesn't mean that we are done with the server side, guys. Server side part still it is pending. So we are doing the parallel, like Node.js server along with the MongoDB. We are going to take it as parallel because right now I can't go forward with this hard coded data. I want to replace this guy with the dynamic data. For sure, we need to go with the database here. Okay. So in this architecture, we have already seen one of the architecture for us, right? Whenever we are going with any of the web development, for sure we will be having a client machine. Client is going to connect to a server, and server in turn has to connect to the Mongo, any of the database or the file system. Okay, we have already seen when I'm going to put a 1 second. Okay, so what I'm doing is what we have already seen is one, the client is going to put a request to the server. Server can go to the file system. From there, we are getting the data. We could able to see that. Remember, we have already worked with the file operations in your Node.js that we have already finished. But now what I want to do, when the client is putting a request to the server, server need to communicate to the database also. I want to go to the database. From the database, I want to return the data. That data will be returned back to the client. So in order to do this process, first of all, let us understand what actually database is. Okay, what is database? Which database you would like to go with? Why the reason we go with the database? Let us have a look on that. Okay, and the database, what we are going to cover in this session is MongoDB. As I already discussed, any database can be replaced with. If you say that I'm expertise on the MySQL, I'm expertise on the Oracle, SQL Server, anything you want, you can go with. But right now we are going with the MongoDB as the database server for our application. So here, what actually we need to do is, first of all, we need to understand why the reason it is MongoDB. Why not the SQL Server? Because most of you would have heard about this Oracle database, SQL Server database and all. Why you are specifically going with this MongoDB? The reason is MongoDB is one of the very unique database nowadays in the market and very popular nowadays in the market. The main popularity how it is going to achieve is MongoDB is the database where it is going to store the data not in the form of tables, but in the form of collections. Okay, what MongoDB says is, I'm not going to state the data in general. Why the reason we go with the database? Database is going to store the data in the form of tables, which is in a organized structure, isn't it? Organized row wise and column wise data, it will be storing, and that data we could able to retrieve it using some putting some queries and all. Whereas coming to the Mongo database, it is called as NoSQL database. What do you mean by NoSQL database? No structured query language implies we are not going to put any type of queries in order to interact with the database. Okay, we are not going to put any queries here. Then what we do, we put some commands in order to interact with the database. That is the first thing. And another thing what we have is, it is not going to store the data in the form of tables. It is going to store the data in the form of collections, which is in turn stores the data in the form of documents. Okay, where individual document is called as a JSON object. Okay, individual JSON object, we call it as a document. You know, the main advantage what we have with your JSON object is JSON is capable of storing any type of structured data, and it is so easy to retrieve the data from the JSON. That is what we know, isn't it? So any type of data, any complex data structures, anything can be represented in the JSON object. And if you want to retrieve the data, if you want to insert the data, it is so simple to do that under the JSON object, isn't it? It's a structured, organized data, and any type of complex structure, any relationship between any relative data can be stored under the JSON object. That is why we prefer JSON. JSON is overcoming with all the data structures. Any data structure data, what all you're doing in other data structures can be done just with your simple JSON object. But now my question is, okay, now my requirement is MongoDB has come up with a solution, something called, if the JSON is having too much of advantages, why don't I store the data under the JSON object itself instead of going with the tables? So that is where the unique part has come into the MongoDB. MongoDB is one of the database. Instead of storing the data in the form of JSON, it will be storing in the form of objects. Okay, in the form of JSON object, it is going to store the data, where individual JSON object, we call it as a document. Okay, we call it as a document, and under the document, whatever the key values are there, we call it as a fields. Are we clear? Okay, so there is a simple comparison picture, guys. Let me show you. Comparing uh, MongoDB with SQL. Okay, if you see here, this is the very simple comparison we have. Okay, this is a simple comparison, guys. The terminology between the SQL and the MongoDB. Okay, in case of SQL, we call it as a database. What is database? Group of collection of data. I mean, multiple tables, multiple collections, we call it as a database. Even in Mongo also, we call the same. Whereas coming to the
Sir, good morning, sir.
yes, ma'am, go ahead, please.
Sir, database అంటే book of data collection of data అన్నారు కదా సార్ how it is transformed sir?
Okay, for example, there is a database for an Amazon shopping application. Okay, there is a database for Amazon shopping application. Under that, I have multiple tables. One table for storing user login details, one table for storing product details, one table for storing items added into the cart, one table for storing admin details. Now, all these tables, relatively, we call it as a online shopping database, isn't it? Did you got that point up to there, ma'am?
Yes sir.
Okay. Now, under a single server, I may store the data for shopping application. I may store the data for student details. I may store the data for employee details. So that is what we call it as a database, group of data related to multiple projects or multiple applications. Are we clear?
Okay ma'am. Okay sir.
Okay. Next. Under the Oracle, under the SQL database, we call the data where we store is called as tables. Whereas under the MongoDB, data what we store, we call it as a collections. We don't call it as a table, but we call it as a collections. Under the tables, each and every record, we call it as a row. Under a single row, we'll be having multiple cells, right? Whereas in case of your MongoDB, we call that as a document. Each individual row is called as a document. And it is also called as BSON, we call it as. BSON is binary format of the JSON format. Okay, it's nothing new. It is in the form of binary format. So the reason why we made it as binary is to make the reason why we make it as binary format is so that like it will be easy read and write accessible things can be done. Okay, that is the reason internally MongoDB is going to store the data in the form of binary format. Okay, and under the rows we call the data in the form of columns, whereas in case of your MongoDB we call them as fields, the key and value pairs. Okay, this is what the comparison between the existing SQL or structured query languages and NoSQL Mongo database. Okay, so as I mentioned, in case of your other database like Oracle or SQL, we go with queries where the data is in the tables. We put some queries in order to operate with the tables. Whereas here we are going to work with the we are not going to put any type of queries, but we are going to put some commands. So MongoDB is one of the unique thing. This is the one which is making it as unique that it is going to store the data in the form of JSON data directly, which we call it as individual collections. Okay, and in order to install the MongoDB, so everybody follow this, guys. So when I go with the Google and I say MongoDB download, okay, so you go with the official mongodb.com. Oh, so here harness power of data, start free. I say MongoDB. Yeah, MongoDB community server. So and there are two versions. One is the paid version and the free version, guys. We are going with the community. Community version is the one which we can use it for free of cost. You can keep this URL. So I want everyone to get ready with installation of MongoDB database by Monday. Okay, so you just go to this link and here you have an option at the bottom which version you would like to go with. The current version or the latest version is 6.0, 6.0.6. So as I mentioned, keeping the version number is also very important, guys. So because like in interviews, people will ask you which version you have worked with. Okay, choose for the package MSI Microsoft installer and go with download. Okay, it will be downloading the MSI operation for you. MSI software. So it's just a simple one, just a double click on it. And while you're clicking on this, in between, you will get an option, something called as install Mongo Compass, guys. So make sure you keep that guy clicked. By default, it will be clicked. Make sure you don't uncheck it. Okay, keep that guy click. Man, it is in the click option itself. Okay, because we need to see what do you mean by Mongo Compass. Actually, Mongo server by default comes with a command line interface. Under the command line, we can see that what do you say? We are going to put some commands executing and all, but we can even make it as a executable. I mean, we can make it as a GUI, graphical user interface also. That is what Mongo Compass is. Anyway, I'm going to explain that. But once you're while you're installing this installer, it will be showing an option at the bottom by check option, something called do you want to install the Mongo Compass. So don't do any odd checks on that, just keep it. Okay, it has to install. Come on, why it is taking too much of time for download? Did anyone started downloading and installed? I mean, installation process started for anyone? Gaurav, yes, good. Make sure everybody does that, guys. Suresh, yes. Or else do one thing, guys. Everybody, to not to waste your time, you download this MSI and just double click on it. It will start installing in your machine, and keep the things ready. Maybe from on Monday class. As I said, you guys, Monday will be having both the online and offline. Again, I'll give an update on the Telegram. So on Monday, I'll be start working with MongoDB. I'll show you like what are the commands we are going to do, how you're going to create the collections, how do we interact with the collections using the commands. Those things we see in the Monday class. Okay, so we'll pause it for today, go with installation and get ready with that, guys. Okay, so have a good day and bye for today, guys.